Hello everyone. Let's discuss prerequisites for signing the CMR, the Convention of International Carriage. It's basically about the development of international rail transport in Europe and about the need to unify legal regulation of international carriage. Beginning of rail carriage in 17th, 18th centuries in Europe and particularly in Germany and France, rail transport began to rapidly develop, and initially railways were used exclusively for transporting goods over short distances, for example, from mining to processing plant. But with the invention of the steam engine, rail transport expanded beyond local fields, but remained still national. Each country developed its own railway infrastructure according to its own internal standards. And here we have issues of international carriage, technical barriers, which means German, French, and Spanish railways were built to different standards. And so trains from one country were physically unable to travel on the tracks of another due to mismatched track gauges and other technical parameters. Also, we have political restrictions. Railways were still owned and operated exclusively by states. Foreign cargo had no direct access to local state railways. And also, European states were not really optimistic about free foreign trade. Lack of transit. The concept of transit didn't yet exist. Cargo was unloaded, inspected, and cleared through customs at each border crossing as fully fledged imports, which greatly complicated the whole delivery process. International successive carriage. Let's consider an example of how cargo used to be transported from Berlin to Madrid via France at the end of the 19th century. So basically, German train delivers cargo from Berlin to the German-French border. Then we have border check. The cargo is unloaded, inspected, and cleared through customs as import into France. The cargo is transshipped to a French train and delivered to the French-Spanish border. Then it has a second border check, unloaded, inspected, and custom clear again. Then it is transshipped to a Spanish train and delivered to the end user in Madrid. So this is how it all came to Berne Convention of 1819. The need to engage multiple local carriers through the chain of international carriage of goods led to the creation of a mechanism to regulate successive carriage. The Berne Convention of 1890 became the first step toward unifying legal regulation. The purpose is actually very simple: to ensure that national carriers cannot evade liability by blaming foreign counterparts in the event of damage to goods. Key points. Article 26.1. The first carrier is liable until the goods have reached their final destination. Article 26.2. Each successive carrier, upon accepting the goods with the consignment note, automatically accesses to the contract and assumes the resulting obligations. Evolution of regulation. So it all started in 1890 with the first Berne Convention of Successive Carriage, and then we had the first revision of Berne Convention in 1898. Then we have second revision of Berne Convention in 1906. In 1907, we have signing of a technical standard for the construction of railway tracks, which means common technical standard for all the European countries. Then we have the third revision of Berne Convention in 1924. In 1933, we have fourth revision of Berne Convention, and the last revision of Berne Convention made in 1952. That led to CMR signing in Geneva in 1956. So, which means that the CMR Convention was modeled on the last revision of Berne Convention that was made in 1952. And it includes all provisions on international successive carriage. The concept of international successive carriage under CMR. Article 34 CMR, where carriage governed by a single contract is performed by successive road carriers, each of them is responsible for the performance of the entire operation, the second carrier and each successive carrier becoming parties to the contract of carriage under the terms of the consignment note by virtue of his acceptance of the goods and the consignment note. The right to make claims. Article 36 of the CMR stipulates that claims may only be made against the first carrier, the last carrier, or to the carrier performing that part of the carriage during which the event occurred which caused the loss, damage, or delay. Recourse claims. Article 37 of the CMR regulates recourse claims between carriers. A carrier that has paid compensation to the shipper has the right to recover all the costs from the carriers involved in the carriage. Criteria for successive carriers. To qualify as a successive carrier, all of the following conditions must be met. Single contract. A single contract of carriage must be concluded covering the entire transport chain from the shipper to the end user. Actual physical carriage. Each carrier must actually physically transport the cargo itself and not transfer its responsibilities to third parties. Cargo and consignment note physical acceptance. Each successive carrier physically accepts the cargo from the previous carrier in the chain and confirms this by signing the consignment note in the appropriate article. Successive carriers versus subcarriers. So who do we call a successive carrier and who do we call a subcarrier? So successive carrier signs single contract of carriage. Actual physical performance of carriage by each participant. Physical acceptance of carriage and signature on CMR along the chain. Joint and several liability for the entire route. Subcarrier signs. Separate contracts with each carrier in the chain, hiring other carriers or instructing other carriers for the actual transportation, lack of direct physical transfer of cargo along the chain, a different scheme of liability. And it is important to note that even if we have the provisions of the CMR and it's pretty clear and simple, different countries have different practices for judicial regulations of claims proceedings, which creates a certain amount of legal uncertainty. But this is how is it. Key findings. So historical necessity. The CMR arose from the practical needs of 19th century of European trade, when technical and political barriers made international transport extremely hard. Legal continuity. The convention is based on 66 years of experience in the application of the Berne Convention, which means starting from 1890 and till 1952. The last revision of convention, and its numerous revisions adapting proven mechanisms for road transport. Protection of interests. Successive carriage system protects the interests of shippers by creating a mechanism for joint liability and simplifying the claims process. Practical reality. Even if it's pretty clear with the convention rules, still we have various practices of judicial regulation of claims proceedings.